and gave him great power. If y'all know Samson, he was pretty much like the strong man of the day. When the Spirit of the Lord entered him, his strength was multiplied. He could do anything. Yeah. And it says Samson went down to the city of Ashkelon, I think I said that right, and killed 30 of his men and took all that they had and gave the clothes to the men who had answered his writ. Okay, that's just one example of Samson. When the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, he killed 30 men. There's another time. I think it's in the same chapter, 14:6, when the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. It says, the Spirit of the Lord entered Samson with great power, and he tore the lion apart with his bare hands. And you think me as a human being could tear a lion apart with my bare hands? I don't know if I was standing a chance against a lion. You know?
The lion could tear him apart with his bare hands.
But Samson, when the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, he was able to take a lion and just rip him to shreds without a problem at all. And Samson did many other things. But it was all through the Spirit of God. It wasn't by his own strength. If he had done it on his own, he would have probably been toast. He would have been dead. It would have been it. Been over. But when the Spirit of God empowers us, and with the Spirit of God we're able to do great things that we might not normally be able to do. It's just like in people that are in an accident, and it's the what's that word? Adrenaline rush. And it's been told they've been able to lift cars, that's the way the Spirit of God can be in us. When it comes on us, we can lift a car up. The Bible says that we have faith as the grain as a mustard seed, we can move them out. Yeah. And that takes a lot of faith to move them out. But when the Spirit of God comes upon us, when we allow the Spirit to work in us and to work through us, we can do great things. Yeah. And it's only through that Spirit that we can do those things. And another example is found over in Acts chapter 3 is Peter. He's walking, him and Peter and John, and there might have been a couple other fellows with him, but they're walking and the lame man is begging. And Peter looks over to him and says, "Silver and gold have I none, but what I give thee, I give to you freely." He says, "Rise up and walk." You think Peter did that on his own? That he reached over to this lame man, picked him up, and told him to rise up and walk, and the man started walking because Peter spoke the words? It wasn't because Peter spoke the words, but it was the Spirit of God and the power flowing through Peter and Peter's faith in Jesus Christ that allowed that man to walk. It wasn't because Peter had any great power of his own. It was the power of God. And so with Gideon, when the power of God came upon him, boy, he got encouraged and he let out a war cry. And he pretty much blew the trumpet. And pretty much what that says there is he blew the trumpet and he sent messengers out to all his neighboring clansmen, you might say, "Hey, let's gather together. We're going to fight a fight, and God's going to go with us, and we're going to destroy our enemy, and we're going to overcome." And in verse 36 it says, back in chapter 6, verse 36, it says, "Then Gideon said to God, you said you would help me save Israel." Excuse me. Well, this here, in that chapter, in that verse 2, that last part of the chapter, Gideon still has a little bit of doubt, so he tests the Lord. He tested the Lord, and he reminds God that you said you want to help me save Israel. Says, so I want you to prove it to me. So he put some wool on the floor, and he said, if there is dew on the wool, but not on the ground, that's proof. And when the next morning come, the ground was dry, and the wool was wet, and the Bible says, I think the King James Version, he wrung it out and got almost a bucket or a cup full of water out of the wool. But that wasn't enough for Gideon. In that same verse, he said, "Don't be angry with me, Lord." He still got some lack of faith in himself. But just to make sure that this is really you, let the ground be wet and the wool be dry. Well, of course, knowing God is faithful, it was. The ground was wet and the wool was dry. And Gideon still needed some reassuring. He's got a little bit of boost, but he still wasn't 100% sure that he was doing what God's told him to do. But now we go into chapter 7, at the